Every market looks obvious in hindsight, but the moments that truly matter, the beginnings, the turning points, the crises, rarely feel that way when you're living through them. This podcast is about those moments, the decisions people make, the risks they take, and the lessons that only time can teach. Welcome to 20 Years of Mortgages by Mortgage Direct. Welcome back. Today's episode takes us to one of the most defining moments in modern financial history, 2008, a year that didn't just interrupt the Spanish property market, it completely rewired it. To explore that moment properly, we wanted to have somebody who experienced it from inside the banking system, not from headlines or from hindsight. Our guest today is Dylan Leworthy Boyle, Director of Regional Production at UCI. Over more than 20 years, Dylan has worked across Spain, Greece, and Brazil, leading lending teams through some of the most volatile financial environments of the last generation. He's seen how risk accumulates, how confidence collapses, and how systems rebuild themselves afterwards. Dylan, it's a real pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here with you and with Mortgage Direct.
Fantastic. So, let's set the scene. In 2008, if you were buying, lending, or investing in Spain, everything changed. And it changed fast. The global financial crisis hit, liquidity dried up as Spanish banks relied on wholesale international lending. The housing market collapsed, prices dropped sharply, having doubled in the previous decade. By 2013, they had fallen around 30 to 40% from the peak. Construction activity plummeted. Developers went bankrupt. Confidence evaporated. From the outside, it felt sudden. From the inside, it must have felt relentless. So, Dylan, take us back to 2008. What do you remember from inside the system as things began to unravel?
Firstly, thank you very much for giving me such a fun year. 2008, that was great fun. Wow. It was a really strange, difficult time, so unexpected, and things began to unravel, and, little things were happening. Nobody really thought things were gonna go the way they did, and really nobody thought that. And then, like with the collapse of like certain big banks, it hit us a lot here, Northern Rock, because that was closer to home than the American ones. And then everything, I think, in all banks. I mean, I lived my bank, but everything went crazy. We just had to move from doing one thing, which was selling loans, selling mortgages, explaining mortgages, what we enjoy doing, to helping distressed clients. And it was just we had to change from one day to the next because suddenly, people had real issues and they needed help.
It was a scary time for
it was because there were so many things happening at the same time. And the biggest shock in the beginning for us was the UK, because the UK went into a recession before Spain. The pound hit parity at that time. It was really difficult for people then. Interest rates went up, and it was a totally different situation to now, I'm happy to say.
Yeah.
But it was tough, and we needed to be really close to people and helping them, especially non-resident clients that needed help in their own language. So it was frantic. It was so busy for years.
Yeah, absolutely. And how quickly did the lending conditions change for the potential borrowers?
Well, the interest rates changed because the Euribor, people say it's said, and I say Euribor all the time, went up. But there wasn't liquidity in the market. So, suddenly the banks there wasn't liquidity in the world. So it wasn't like a one bank thing. So there was a lot less money on offer. People were a little bit, not only the lenders, the buyers were also not really looking for new mortgage loans at the time. So it dried up, really. And work just went to other areas in all banks. I know people that work in high street banks, and they went on to doing the same kind of things we were doing in a different way.
So how did it feel like things were coming to a grinding halt? What was it like inside UCI at that time?
Honestly, it was so busy. We had so much to do that nobody was focused on, this. It was just we've got to focus on this and we've got to do this quickly. I think we all thought this was going to pass much more quickly than it finally did, because it finally went on for a while. Okay. I was really lucky because I lived the Spanish crisis. Then I moved to Greece for the Greek crisis, and then I moved to Brazil for that one. And I will say, don't worry, I didn't bring one back to Spain with me because I've been back now for 8 years. But it went on. It went on, and it was intense.
Absolutely. So one group that was hit particularly hard was obviously the international buyers. Before 2008, confidence was high, and during the crisis, it collapsed pretty much overnight, if you remember. So rebuilding that trust took years, didn't it?
It took a long time, and also the areas where international buyers generally bought at that time, which was more maybe Levante area and especially Costa del Sol, Marbella area, the prices, the dip that you mentioned of 30 to 40%, it was higher than that in certain cases. So, I mean, the confidence was, nobody wants to invest in something that they don't see it's going to be going up. Nobody wants to invest in Bitcoin if they don't think it's going to go up. Nobody wants to invest right now, today, in AI, whereas last week everybody wanted to. Like, you've got to see that things are getting better to have the confidence to invest in it. So that had gone, and that took a long time to restore. And nobody can restore that. The whole market needs to be growing again for that to be restored. And
so immediately after 2008, how did the client profile, the international buyer, how did it change? What was it like during those years when the prices were falling?
It's really interesting because up until 2008, we had a certain kind of international buyer. I mean, the vast majority then were Brits. And I've got these graphs that I use in presentations, and I love them because it's like there was mostly Brits, and then all the other large nationalities adding on top of them. That dropped, and it dropped for a few years, and then little by little, people started to buy again. It was still the Brits. All the other nationalities started to get a much bigger share of the pie. So, like, it's going up now. The market is much bigger now than it was before 2008. Maybe not the British market. That's a little bit smaller maybe, but it's still the most significant part. But there are so many other nationalities now, all bidding for the same properties. But it also makes the whole system more robust. Because if, there's a bad year for the Germans, the Brits might be having a good year. Last year, the Americans, we've had 2 years of Americans buying in like they never have
Crazy
before.
Numbers.
So it's a much more complete market now. It's much more interesting.
Yeah. So what do you think, what misunderstandings about Spain and Spanish lending do you see most frequently?
Well, the problem is when people, and we all do this, you want to import or export what happens in your country to what happens in another country. I've had that even in my professional life, that when I've had to work in different countries, the head office thinks things are the same, and there's different legal systems, there's different requirements. We get that a lot. We get people asking for loans, and they don't understand why we're asking for certain documents, because I don't have to give this document in the States or in Dubai or in England or wherever. But we're under the Bank of Spain regulation. There are certain things we have to do. Products, interest only. In certain countries, it's very typical, and they don't understand why in Spain that's not available. And right now, today, it's not. And another thing that was really interesting in the crisis was some clients, and I don't know why, because we didn't have so many American clients then, and I know it's a really American thing, they would want to give the keys back. You cannot give the keys back. It doesn't make sense because they were never the banks in the first place. There are ways of doing that. There's a legal procedure we can go through, and we did, to help people that didn't have another solution to their issue. But they want to do what they do in their country, and you've got to know how things work in the country that you're operating in, even if it's not your country.
Yeah. So how did UCI adapt in 2008 and those years afterwards? How did it adapt to rebuild its credibility with international clients?
Okay, so with international clients, we didn't ever stop, but yeah, we were much slower and much more cautious. And then I would say, like, starting maybe 10 years ago, we decided, okay, we want to get into this. So then we had to really work hard to build a whole ecosystem that was what the client needed, what the final client needed, and what our partners like Mortgage Direct need from us. So it's not just, and it is important, having people that speak the language, that understand the culture. This is obvious. Everybody knows that. People try to replicate that. Some manage, some don't. But there's a whole process. You can't just sign a mortgage and expect the client just to deal with things in Spanish for the rest of their life when they don't speak Spanish. You know that from day one. So you have to make sure the whole ecosystem, the whole procedural developments, IT developments, documentations, post, after sales, collections if the clients have an issue. Everything's adapted to those people, to their needs, to their reality, because they're very different realities. I mean, in each country, there are different systems in place to help people when they have problems, and you have to adapt.
How well do you think banks in Spain, UCI, you can probably speak about better, but how well do banks in Spain cope with those different nationalities, the languages, the tax declarations, different rules in different countries?
Okay, each bank is different. I mean, you guys know because you're experts. You know exactly what to do with each client because you know where they're going to fit. Okay, there are obviously a few really good banks in Spain, which I'm not going to name. I'm just going to name UCI. But obviously there are, okay, and they know how to do things. There are others that want to try to do this because it looks really exciting and I want to do that, but they don't know how, so they kind of come in and out. The ones that know, each of us have got different target clients, I would say. I know that in UCI we're very, very good with complex clients that are really good clients, but they just don't fit into a scoring system so simply because you need to spend days probably analyzing the holding they've got in Dubai and this they've got here in London and their savings and their buy-to-lets and all this stuff. It's like different banks do different things. We're very good at seeing the whole picture.
I think my lasting impression with UCI is complex profiles. So a lot of these profiles get rejected by the kind of more mainstream retail banks, I would say, because UCI is not actually a bank. But those cases, and we look at them sometimes, and we have the clients themselves telling us, this would be approved in 5 minutes if I walk into my local branch in my home country. And we have to explain why that won't be the case in Spain. But we find UCI has such a better or a more flexible way of dealing with those types of profiles.
Exactly. And it's not bad. That's a really important point there, because obviously no bank, we're not a bank, but we are a financial institution and we're regulated by the Bank of Spain. So, I mean, we're under exactly the same guidelines. You're not going to finance somebody that's not financeable. They're good clients, but they're just much more complex, and you've got to know how to analyze them. And like you said, it's not because people don't want to. It's just it just doesn't fit into a simple system.
Yeah,
and we like them.
Right. So, Dylan, what do you think are the biggest differences between lending today and lending prior to 2008?
Okay, the differences. First of all, we see different clients now than we did then. I think everything was much more simple then. Now we see much more complex clients. But are you asking the differences internally, like how we see clients? Or
so prior to 2008, let's say things might have been a little bit more flexible, the rules in place, which we'll come on to later in the podcast. But how was it? You were in UCI prior to 2008. Then we've had this huge global crisis. And then we come through to today. How does it compare, do you think?
I think it's a much more professional market now for everyone. I mean, the banks are more, the banks that are working with international clients now, we understand much better. You learn a lot from I don't want to say from mistakes, from the past, from situations. And so it's much more professional that part. And the clients have a lot more information. I mean, we're living in a digital time now that we really weren't so much. The internet was just starting and stuff. So they have more information available to them now as well. So it's quite a different environment.
Okay. What about safeguards? Which safeguards do you think exist today, or do you think exist today that simply didn't exist back then?
There's so many. That's the main thing is that, I mean, we, all of us, you and I, we have been, I would say, organized by the Bank of Spain. There's legislation now. It's called the LCCI in Spain. So that we have to be certified and registered with the Bank of Spain. You are, I am. So nobody that's not should be able to be involved in any way at all with giving advice or informing about mortgages. And for the client, there's so much information and structure now, for example, that they get the standardized information sheet. They can compare what they're getting from each place in a standardized way. So it's very easy to compare. There are many things in place now, like the cancellation fees. They've been set by law. There are no floors and caps. Nobody has a problem with the caps, I guess, but they won't be around anymore. But there's no floors in mortgages like they used to be when rates went down and lots of people go. I mean, all of this has been legislated in a really structured way. I'm not saying the law is not improvable, because there are bits that I would improve, but it's definitely better for us and definitely better for the clients now because there's a lot more legislation.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you think there's any looming mis-selling scandals that could happen in Spain with regards to the banks?
Wow. Not prepared for that one at all. I don't know. I mean, I hope not. I hope not, because it's not good for anybody. I mean, we've lived through a financial crisis. There's no winners in that. Well, maybe one or two of the big banks, but we lost half the banks in Spain. They disappeared overnight. Many people, couldn't keep their dream property. So I really hope there's not. It's up to us all to be responsible and to do things correctly, and not to, there were people forging documents back in the day and stuff, and that is a very selfish thing to do in a way, because you make a quick buck and you can break a whole system. So we need to be responsible.
Presumably lenders can now spot things like that a bit more easily, or is it?
It's definitely easy because there's a lot more things available to be able to check. Okay, the more international clients that you finance, the more complex it becomes, because you need to understand documentation and fiscal rules and tax documents in so many different countries. So it's very easy in, let's say, 10 nationalities that we work with very, very often. And then there are others that it gets more complicated. We've got ways of checking, but I'm not going to give those secrets away. But we're a lot more prepared for that today than we ever were before.
Okay. Given all the improvements to the structure of the system, do you think there could ever be a collapse similar to 2008 again, or do you think things are just fundamentally different now?
That's a big question, because could there ever be? I mean, there could ever in the future be. In the short, medium term, absolutely not. And the reason for that is just that everything's different. There were apparently, and the numbers could be 10% higher or lower than what I'm saying now, but there were 1,670,000 properties for sale with nobody wanting to buy them. Okay, let's say in 2010, 12, and like that. Now, at any given moment, there's only 150 available. Probably some of them are duplicated anyway. Many of them might not be in areas people want to buy. And there's 600,000 or more purchases happening every year. There's just not enough stock. So that 1.67 million that took 10 years to be absorbed, right now would be gone in 3 years, and it doesn't exist. So the laws of supply and demand say that even if we go through, we've been through little shocks recently with COVID, and then after, I remember in between now and COVID, there was another little shock which made property prices go down in many European countries and in the States, and they just carried on going up in Spain. And that's explained simply by supply and demand. There's a huge demand, there's not supply, and they're not building. They were building 600,000 a year. Not even, more or less 100,000 properties are being built now, and we'd need 200 or 300 just to fulfill the needs of people who live in Spain. So, I mean, right now, in the medium and long term, even if there's a crisis, that couldn't happen. Could it happen in 20, 30 years? Well, that's too far away to predict.
What about house building? Have you got any knowledge on that? Do you think, are we likely to see house building increase to the required numbers anytime soon, or do you think it's just...
I think it's going to take time, because first there's the legislative part that everyone's talking about now, and that's good. At least they're talking about it, so they're talking about how to make things go quick. Here in Madrid, we can see a lot of activity, because it's probably very profitable in Madrid, because the prices now are quite high, maybe also in Costa del Sol. But in general, there's land isn't being freed up enough. There's a lot of bureaucracy. But even if we overcome all of that, there doesn't seem to be skilled labor available, which was around 20 years ago. And I don't know what they're all doing now. They must have found a job somewhere else.
I think 30 to 40% of the Spanish labor force were in construction at the point when the crisis hit.
Yeah.
So where are they all gone?
I think a lot of them went back to their countries when the crisis happened, and
they might be too old to work on a construction site now.
Maybe.
But, I think when you live in a city centre, as we do, there are quite a lot of firms that are renovating buildings in cities. But you wonder, what is that going to make a dent into the lack of properties that people need?
It's a real difficult one, and it's something that needs to be addressed. But like I said, it's the government, the part the government can do, but also that there are people, and also the cost of labor and the cost of materials is a lot more now as well. So new properties are going to cost more, as they do, and the regulation in place, which makes them, I mean, they have to be energy efficient today, whereas in the past you could just build anything and sell it. So it's difficult, but it's definitely something that needs addressing in Spain, and I think in most countries in the Western world right now, maybe a little bit worse here.
Okay. So we've looked back to 2008, obviously a hugely important year in the Spanish property market. Let's sort of look ahead a bit now. So it feels like we're entering a turning point, if you like, in time. Global mobility, remote buyers, geopolitical risk, and technological advances, including AI, obviously. What advice would you give international buyers entering the Spanish property market today?
That's quite easy. I mean, they've got to choose well what they're doing. When you're buying in a country which is not your own country, you need to be able to trust people. You need to choose very wisely. So they need to choose a mortgage consultant like Mortgage Direct that they can trust, okay? They need to choose an estate agent that's reputable, that they can trust. They need, if they're going to use a lawyer, to, often they recommend it, so they can choose someone that's been recommended by somebody, or check properly, online to get a good idea, because you've always got some haters in there as well, but you can guess when things are good and when they're not by the majority of what people are saying. That's important, okay? You've got to choose wisely and have proper advice. Not only legal advice, financial advice. Like, if I was going to buy tomorrow in Morocco, I'd need people I can trust there. I don't know anything about the situation there. So
absolutely. It's one of the first things we always tell potential clients. Make sure you have a lawyer. And it's crazy that some people do come to Spain to buy a property and they think they can do it by themselves or cut corners. And quite often
they can. I mean, Spanish people don't employ a lawyer, but because they know the system, it's their system. It's not the same when you're in a different country with a different system that you don't understand.
We as brokers, intermediaries, we end up doing answering a lot of legal questions when that happens. And quite often we do have to put our foot down, because at the end of the day, we aren't lawyers. We don't want to be legally liable for anything we might tell the client. So we always do advise them to get a good lawyer.
But that's the key, a good one.
A good lawyer.
Yeah.
A good lawyer, come to us. We can help you select a valuation company that's going to be efficient. So being prepared is what we're saying, isn't it?
Yeah.
Basically for international buyers that don't know the market.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? So coming back onto the banking side of things, what do you think will define the next decade on the lending side of things?
That's difficult. We do like 3-year plans and we don't know what's happening in 3 years, so 10 years. What's going to happen? I can see a lot, of course, a lot more digitalization to make the system flow more easily. The use of AI, if and where it can be employed, you know that as well as I do. It's what we do, especially an international client mortgage, is more complicated, more complex, more varied and difficult to predict than a national one, which would just be, a salaried Spanish person, whatever. It's much more simple. So automizing is difficult, but we will be automizing as many things that don't need a human to help, just like chores that just take up our time. And then we'll have more time available to be able to speak to the client, listen to the client, know what they need. Like you said, we do get involved with everything in the bank, and we're kind of in the same area with the clients. So we help them, and we help them with the lawyer, we help them with their estate, we help put everything into place for what can be really complex. That's where we add value, like being with our client and listening to them and helping them. And the more automatable chores should be made as automatic as possible.
Absolutely. So another question looking to the future, how do you see the next 20 years in our industry? I know we're kind of on the same theme for these last 3 questions, but just in general terms, the next 20 years. That's a question that we like to ask everybody that we invite on the podcast.
I had difficulty with 10 years, so 20 is going to be easy now. We'll probably be retired, Kevin. Next 20 years. I'm guessing that, just because Spain is Spain, there's going to be a huge international market here always, because I don't know if this is what you want me to say, but I mean, it's the country that everybody wants to live in. I mean, we've got the weather, we've got the lifestyle, we've got the food. The cost of living is reasonable, but on top of that, everything is organized. I mean, the infrastructure is organized. Okay, we had a bad thing with the train last week, but the trains here are bloody good. The roads are good. The hospitals are good. It's a really organized and structured country. I've lived in a few countries and not comparable to Spain in that sense. So, it might be very structured in Switzerland, but maybe that's not where you want to retire to, and maybe it's very expensive. I mean, Spain is going to be a big market for international buyers forever, and we can see that because instead of dropping off, they're adding on nationalities all the time. I don't know, like the growth I've said of Americans in the last 2 years has astounded me because it's kind of quite far away, and they're buying second homes here in huge numbers.
Have you noticed any drop? I mean, the dollar dropped, I think, sort of 10, 11% against the euro last year. What have you had?
I haven't noticed it yet. We've got some like data that we buy every year from the notaries that we'll be able to give you all in an event we'll be doing shortly in a few months. I haven't seen it yet in the data available to me. I haven't seen a drop in the loans that I'm processing, but of course I'm processing only the ones that come to my bank. I would have imagined it would have dropped because of the drop in the dollar, but there are other things in play there. I'm not going to get into that, but there are other people that are coming for other reasons. So it seems still to be going pretty strong.
Absolutely. We've got the same opinion on that as well. So we've still got plenty of American clients coming over despite the currency drop. So I think what really stands out from our discussion today, Dylan, is that the evolution of our industry wasn't just driven by clever strategy, but also it was driven by resilience, by rebuilding trust when confidence had disappeared, by adapting faster than the market was collapsing, and by understanding people and not just the numbers. Thank you for sharing all your insights with us. It's been a real pleasure to have you on our podcast today, Dylan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and good luck for the next 20 years.
Great. Thank you. This was Chapter 3 of 20 Years of Mortgages by Mortgage Direct. In each episode, we explore a moment that shaped how international buyers navigate Spain and what those moments still teach us today. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next chapter.